Okay, I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting Thursday, July 21st, 2022. And our second item on the agenda is to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? The motion carries. Okay, we're going to move on to approve the minutes from June 14th, 2022. Could I get a motion to approve the June 14th, 2022 Planning Commission minutes?
I move to approve the June 14th, 2022 Planning Commission minutes.
Okay, we have a motion, second.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're down to the item number 4, which is a public hearing on a proposed amendments to the city's Heritage Preservation Commission ordinance. City Manager Merrick will go over the presentation, and do I open the public hearing? Okay, so we'll now open the public hearing. Do you give a presentation before the public?
I don't really have a presentation. Well, yeah, not a PowerPoint, but I have a presentation I can give.
Okay, should we open the public hearing first, and you can give it during the public hearing?
Sure.
Okay. We'll now open the public hearing. Those wishing to address the Planning Commission should come forward and state their name and address for the record. After all comments are received, the public hearing will be closed. No further comments on the issue will be received at this meeting. Mr. Merrick.
Thank you. Good to see you, Planning Commission. So a little bit of a unique process piece for you tonight. So this is our preservation district involves land use, and so it was the city attorney's recommendation, since it involves land use, that a public hearing be held at the Planning Commission. So just a little bit of background on our preservation district. At one point there was nearly 100 structures in our preservation district within the downtown, and we have a Heritage Preservation Commission that essentially manages that. I serve as their lead staff and kind of manage, with Brenda Good's help, kind of the day-to-day activities. But anytime someone does an exterior improvement to their building, they have to get what's called the Certificate of Appropriateness through the HPC, or the Heritage Preservation Commission. Sometimes that can be administrative if they're re-roofing with architectural shingles. Sometimes it can be more complex. If you look at 120 Broadway, where the Getaway Motor Cafe is, they did quite a bit of work to windows, doors. They're adding an exterior deck and stairs and signage. And so those items get taken to the HPC. They review based on a set of design guidelines. And several years ago, the city worked with a consultant and created a set of residential design guidelines, because we have residential properties that are in the historic district, and commercial guidelines for our commercial properties that are within the historic district. And so the HPC uses that as a guide to review best practices. So kind of I think a pretty simple example is you're not going to be allowed to put vinyl siding on a home that already has wood siding. Your traditional entrance door, you're not going to be able to put on like a traditional or modern, white screen door. We're going to want to have that traditional commercial look. And if you referenced on the website, they actually did mock-ups of some of these buildings that show kind of what a homeowner should be targeting. And so one of the things that, in working with the HPC, that they really wanted to do is kind of clean up their ordinance. Hasn't been done in the time that I've been here. And one of the things that they were kind of struggling with is there's a lot of process and approvals that go along, and work that go along with these certificates of appropriateness. But if someone chooses to kind of weekend warrior it, and they'll put on the vinyl siding, what remedies does the city, or namely the HPC, have? And the existing ordinance was kind of cumbersome. There was kind of a tiered piece that involved some fines that really weren't clear, and I think would have been difficult to enforce. And so that kind of led to a kind of a comprehensive review. We had our new city attorney, Dave Anderson, sit down with me and the HPC, and we reviewed the ordinance, came up with some suggestions, draft ordinance, and then we took that the HPC kind of signed off on it. We took it to the city council at a work session about a month ago. They were comfortable with it. And so now we're bringing it to the planning commission. Once you sign off on it, or if you sign off on it, we take it back to the HPC for their final recommendation, and then city council adoption probably in the neighborhood of the second meeting in August for the council. So I'll just hit some highlights, but I'm happy to get into any details. But essentially, I would say that one of the main changes is it makes the violation of this ordinance or the preservation ordinance a misdemeanor, which is similar to what we have for all of the city ordinances. Now, a misdemeanor can be 90 days in jail and $1,000 fine. Now, it's typically not what you're going to see here. But what it does, it sets up some leverage for process where we can work with the property owner to say, okay, in order to avoid this pomp and circumstance, or being contacted by the Carver County Attorney's Office, who we contract with, we can work with you on developing an application and getting you through the process. The other thing that this does is it adds a little bit more formality to our review process. So if someone comes in for, let's say, vinyl siding and they're denied, we really don't have, and we're working towards it, but we don't have a great denial process. And so what this does is sets up the criteria for denial, and what Jim and Cindy are probably familiar with from a council perspective. When development projects are denied, typically the council, and I think then sometimes the planning commission, they've authorized the city attorney to prepare findings of fact denying it. So you could certainly approve it, but we want to make sure that we have a resolution denying it and what the reasons were for the denial of this application. So it, in essence, kind of brings the HPC to a similar process that the planning commission has. And then with that in mind, something that I think some of you are familiar with, they are kind of involved with this, what's called the 60-day rule. So once they make the application, if the city doesn't act on it, it's automatically approved. And that's something that you might have intermittently heard from Aaron Smith talk about, that we need to process this or ask the developer to ask for an extension, or we have to deny it because it's an incomplete application. So in a roundabout way, what this does is kind of formalizes the HPC. And Cindy and Jim can probably speak better to this, but at least when I first started, I felt like the HPC felt more like a interested group of residents, almost kind of a little bit of a club mentality. There were people that were really interested in it. There was some formality, but I think what this does is this puts the HPC on the same process level as the Planning Commission. And I think that's in everyone's best interest, the applicant, the city, the preservation folks. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. Again, we're here tonight because this involves land use, so wanted to give residents an opportunity to speak to the ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions on the ordinance or the Preservation Commission in general, or the Historic District.
Did you want to just quick go through the ordinance itself? Just a quick page through it, maybe?
Did everybody read the ordinance?
I did. I didn't know I need to memorize it.
I have questions.
Yeah.
So why don't we can go through the whole ordinance, but
It'd be,
I prefer that we just, if we have questions about it, we
Oh,
ask
sure.
the questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, Ruth. Do you have questions, or?
Sure. So the first question is on the owner. How is the owner of the building notified when their property falls under the jurisdiction? Is it's on the title, I presume, or how would they notified their?
well, so the city has a map.
Okay.
I don't know if there's it's on the title or not. I doubt that it would be. But in nearly all instances, there's a plaque on the
Okay.
property,
Sure.
identifying it as a historic property.
So
On the National Register. of Historic
odds are the
Places.
owner would be well aware that their building is under the.
Correct.
They're also on the street side, right?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Defining the history.
We also do a annual mailer to all properties within the district, notifying them that they're in the district and what the HPC does and their obligations to
Okay.
obtain a certificate of appropriateness for exterior improvements. So they can do anything they want, under the building code to the interior. It's just the exterior work, so porches, doors, windows, roofs, siding, etc.
Okay.
I have a question, if I may.
Mhm.
Actually, 2 points, and maybe it's implied, so I read through it a couple times, but, didn't stick very well. Section 2-369, I noticed there, it talks about, the commission and written findings. Is there a time frame that either the commission has to act or communicate? I have the same question on C in that section, where it talks follow, approve, or denial of application required under the division. I do not notice a time.
It falls under that 60-day rule, so we need to
Okay.
act within the 60 days.
Okay. Should that be, I hate to be picky unish, but should that also be spelled out though again in some of these areas? I mean, there's a lot to digest here.
Typically, it's, I'm putting on what I hear from the city attorney. They don't like to have duplicate language, so they state it once as
Okay.
it relates to the entire ordinance.
Okay.
I think that, just from what I understand, then you're kind of, if you don't have it in an area where someone thinks it should be, then they don't think it may apply, so they hit it once and then it applies to the whole document.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a process question.
Mhm.
Was anybody notified of the public hearing that's tonight? Like, I know if they're, like, if it's in your area for the other public hearings, they're like notified. Was the entire historic district notified of this public hearing, or?
No, it
just
was,
like paper?
it was
Or
just put into our just a legal notice section.
Got it.
I was interested, so you have 14 days to appeal. Does the 14 days have to fall in to the 60?
Yes.
Or once we?
Well, no, that's, the
60 goes to the rejection.
the city has already rejected it by the time the appeal, so the appeal isn't counted within the first 60 days.
Okay,
Because the city by that time has already taken action.
and it was 14 days, and I can't remember if it just said 14 days, didn't say work days, did it?
Not just as.
Yeah, we made a change to 14. That was a specific piece the council talked about, so.
It's 14 days of the date the commission's decision.
We didn't want to get
or
into
say
work
staff
days,
decision is
'cause
sent to applicant.
if there's a holiday or what's a work day, so we thought that was more clear. And it's consistent with how we have in our other sections related to other notices, so.
Doesn't seem like that's a very long time. I mean, you could put it, it's when it's sent out.
Yeah,
I mean, it could easily take 4 days in the mail in certain times of the year, 4 or 5 days. I mean, is that the way we normally send it out via the mail?
Yeah, I would say now every application I deal with, it's an email, so they're getting it either that same night or the next day.
To me, that doesn't seem like a very long time.
It's the planning commission's
Yeah,
prerogative
we
to
can
make
make-
a
we can make it
recommendation.
longer.
I would say that, there's not been a situation in the time that I've worked on this where someone hasn't gotten it the next day. And frankly, they're 99.9% of the time at the meeting, so they hear the denial, so they're aware. So it's only that they're getting the official paperwork. So I understand the point. I'm not confident that the impact is there that maybe you're seeing.
okay, I have a question about that too. When we send out the denial, or there's been a denial, I mean, they get something in writing, right?
Correct.
And in that document, does it say someplace you have 14 days from this date to appeal.
Correct.
Okay. And I mean, if they needed more time, could they call the city and say, hey, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
Is that
within,
notification of the appeal, and then presumably there'd be a city council meeting to take up the
yeah,
appeal?
I would, anecdotally, there's been one appeal in the 12 years that I've been with the city, so this doesn't happen very often. It can, that's why we have it in the ordinance, but I would say that we're gonna take the side of if someone calls and says, hey, I need 5 more days. Now, we've had folks that, you know, recently have called like 6 months after and said, I want to appeal, and then we say, well, you missed your window. No pun intended.
I have a question in section 2-366, letter A, certificates required. Unless the city manager determines that certain types of actions are routine in nature and may be administratively reviewed and approved by the city manager, what are examples of these routine in nature?
So I'll give you an example of the former Carver Liquor is in the process of being leased out by a new daycare or learning center, and they're putting up a picket fence, wood picket fence, which is meets our guidelines, and so I provided an administrative approval, and then what I do is, as soon as I send that out to the applicant, then a copy of that goes out to the full HPC and the council liaison. At this time, it's Councilmember Mock, so they see it, and so if they notice it, they're like, oh yeah, we gave it administrative review. Another example is architectural shingle. So the things that are like, there's not really any nuance to this. It's either it meets it or it doesn't. I would say, you know, the majority of them go to the HPC because they involve, you know, windows and grid patterns or door designs. But you know, they do only meet once a month, so we, you know, we're trying to find, and it's an ongoing, I would say, story where, you know, we don't want to hold an applicant for 30 days to get a 30-second approval from the HPC. If it feels like, hey, this is something that we routinely do, there's no nuance to it, we're going to give them that approval and get them started.
Okay, thank you.
I had another follow-up. So how are the violations for the historic preservation, you know, handled versus other building code violations? Is basically this ordinance to kind of make the match, like you said, we're updating it to a you know, misdemeanor, and then, you know, they need permitting more.
Yeah, I guess I meant more of like so if you don't shovel your walk or mow your lawn, those types of violations. The building code is its own kind of separate being where the building official can issue a stop work order, or what's commonly referred to as a red tag. They can, you know, there's a whole series of, you know, if a framing inspection isn't done correctly, you know, they can order work to be done a different way. So that's, I would say that's an arm's length away from what this is at.
Okay.
And then, excuse me, section 2-305A, authorized city employees and contractors shall be provided access at reasonable hours of the day to property designated as a heritage preservation landmark to ensure compliance of this division. It's only exterior alterations, right? So you're just basically, we're just saying our city employees can come on your property to see that, okay.
100%.
Okay, and my other question was, is landscaping included in on exterior?
Yeah, I mean, that's a more nuanced piece. It depends, I mean, if it's, we're kind of drifting a little bit from that. I mean, you don't need approval to put a tree up, but like, several years ago, you know, someone wanted to put, at grade solar panels in their yard.
Oh, yeah.
And so like,
Yeah.
I would say like, we put that there and encourage a conversation, and then we kind of see what's going on and make a determination.
I mean, in the past, I don't recall paint color being
It's not.
Okay,
We can't choose paint.
No.
There's a color palette that's suggested, but the actual selection of colors goes beyond the authority of the HPC.
that's what I thought. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have comments, questions? Well, the public hearing's been open for maybe 15 minutes.
Talking another 5 or
Sure.
call it, I don't know.
I was gonna say, I
Probably.
feel like
Okay.
somebody would have been here.
Yeah, I would think so.
And I would just, sorry to interrupt, sorry, there isn't anything that I can see this isn't adding to like the requirements. This is
Kinda
kind of,
just
in a
firming
nerdy
it.
way, it's kind of process oriented,
Yeah, it's
so.
kind of just firming things up so they're
Yeah.
more straightforward.
Right.
This is- Yeah,
Yeah, I guess as a general comment, it does seem like it reads more clearly. Not that I haven't read it previously, but based on the additions, it does seem like it does make it clearer if that's the goal. So
right.
And I would say like the HPC has put in a lot of time here, so, I think it's something that they're really proud of, the work that they put into this. It was largely their comments and then the responses from the city attorney, so, I'm happy to see them, work on a project and finish a project like this.
I really also like the fact that there will be written documentation for their decisions. Because there hasn't always been. I think that just makes everything clearer.
Right.
And, a little fairer. Okay, at this point, does everybody have any other comments, questions? Because if not, I'm gonna ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Is there,
Second.
there's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Now we're down to the point where, you sure there's, it says the planning commission. Do we want to discuss any further? Seems like during the public hearing, we did all of our asking the questions, so.
Yeah. I move to recommend approval of ordinance 07-2022 to amend the preservation regulations.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
No, I just, like Brent said, I think if the Heritage Preservation Commission did a great job, I think it definitely improves readability.
Yeah,
That's a
thank
nice
them for their
improvement.
work.
Yes, thank you.
Will do.
If there is no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending the approval of ordinance 07-2022, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All
Thanks.
right. Thank you for the presentation. We'll move down to item 5, communications. Does anybody have anything they'd like to communicate?
I have one.
Go for it.
Yes.
So between this and the last meeting, I met with the city, I think a city engineer or somebody on behalf of the city engineer, about the intersection of Hartwell and Ironwood Drive, which is the elementary school's actual intersection. There is very poor sight lines if you're coming from the south looking towards Timber Creek. And as Timber Creek starts getting more residents, that will become a very blind intersection for people. And he at least did agree with me that is a poor sight line, and he said he would bring it to the city. And I don't know if anything's become of that, but I just wanted to say that.
Can you tell me the intersection in Hartwell and what?
Hartwell and Ironwood Drive, so
Ironwood.
it's like the actual intersection where you pull into the elementary school.
Oh, yep. Mhm.
If you enter that intersection from the south, you have a stop sign. The future people coming from Timber Creek do not have a stop sign and could go straight through. And because of the way the intersection has been changed a few times because of the elementary school, a little bit of redesign, and now that there just is going to be traffic, it wasn't really thought of well for sight-wise. And so when your stops, if you pull up the intersection from the south, you cannot look left.
See that.
And that they have the right of way to go because they do not have a stop sign and you cannot see them.
Okay.
Well, so I did talk to, so it was Dan Lanis, the city engineer, and so I think so he did communicate back to you, so I can make sure he follows up with you. But what he conveyed to me was that they're gonna be studying the intersection.
Yeah.
Especially once school starts, they wanna get some traffic counts, see how the intersection operates. I would say one of the things he's concerned about is it's not really ideal for a four-way stop because you don't wanna back up traffic onto Jonathan Carver Parkway. The sight lines do meet standards for an intersection control there. Now, is there an opportunity to maybe make it better? Yes, but it does meet, and and I'm not the engineer, but he did communicate that it does meet design
did say that, okay.
specifications. So and I've driven that section and looked at it specifically. No, it's certainly not something that you're gonna wanna do a rolling stop there. You're gonna have to come to a stop and creep and look and make sure that there's nothing there. We have that in some other areas, but I think point well taken, that's something that we're gonna be on the lookout for and making sure that it's gonna meet the needs now and into the future.
Yeah, that must be an update since I met with him, because when I showed him the photos and when I was showing him during a meeting, he said it did not meet sightline or regulation, so that could be an update that he has said.
Yeah.
At the time, he said either because he was adamant against the four-way stop idea too.
Yeah.
But he was saying like some changes is they could simply move the stop sign from the south because it's so far back away from the intersection.
Right.
That causes the Spring Creek, like their sign is basically the problem.
Copper Hills.
Copper Hills, yeah. The Copper Hills sign is the problem. If
Yeah.
you didn't have the Copper Hills sign, there would be no problem, but the Copper Hills sign is the problem.
Yeah, you'd sit like the Copper Hills sign is kind of right on the boundary of where you'd feel comfortable, but if you've seen that Copper Hills sign, it's not like a sign that you pick up and move.
Definitely not.
So it's got footings and stonework, and so.
But if it's a safety issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Dan's on top of it. I'll make sure that he does a follow up with you just to
Yeah,
make sure
as long
you
as they're
get.
looking into it.
Yep.
Because I just don't think anybody's thought of it because nobody's planned for there being traffic there yet.
Well, that was taken into account, and there are improvements that are being made actually further down Ironwood to accommodate that, extension of a left-hand turn lane into the school site, some median work, so, it was accounted for. I just think it's, as conditions change, like you said, you'd have to keep looking at it from different angles, no pun intended, to like make sure that everything's covered under kind of what the new environment is, so.
Yeah. Good to hear.
Now to follow up with that with the city engineer, how does that play into the role with a school zone? And, with Ironwood Drive and obviously meeting code, but potentially not wanting to have a four-way stop there for traffic flow and so forth. I know that there's, obviously a school right there. I see, my backyard's right there on Ironwood Drive. And so I see all that traffic, the dump trucks and everything coming through. Typically, if they come through Ironwood Drive, it's almost like the Indianapolis Speedway going down Ironwood Drive, and then they start slowing down into the construction. And unfortunately, just this morning, I had a niece that was in an accident by a dump truck too, right there on Ironwood Drive. So,
Sorry.
it is a major concern personally for me too, as well as a resident, because I do see all that traffic going by through. And I also am a walker with my son that goes to school there. We've been hit very closely multiple times just because of.
You've been hit multiple times?
No. Closely
Oh.
been hit by walking because of the crosswalks and everything, and people don't know where to go. And the traffic coming out of school also cannot make a left-hand turn because of the traffic on Ironwood Drive. And so that backs up all the traffic in the school. What the other commissioner is also talking about when you're going north on Hartwell Drive, the lane to make a right-hand turn is also the straight lane to go to the school. And when you can't cross that intersection because it's so busy, that traffic starts backing up. You actually have cars get really upset, go to the left-hand lane, make a right-hand turn. It's a complete mess, especially from 7:15 to like 7:45 in the morning. School drop off and pickup times. So
Yeah, I would say point taken. I would say, that's the challenge with this is we're talking about basically a half hour in the morning and a half hour in the evening, and so I would would respectfully push back a little bit and say a lot of this is driver behavior. I mean, if people are not following, so that's one of the things, not following traffic lanes and speed, it's an opportunity for our sheriff's office to have some dedicated patrol. But like, you started off saying you have a question. Is there an ask here, or
No, it was just mostly making sure that, what's considered a school zone. If obviously, I'm hoping that the city engineer is looking into that part too, because
when you say what's considered a school zone, can you say more about that?
well, not necessarily lower speed. I mean, you go into other areas, especially within the school district, not necessarily, in the city of Carver, but everywhere else. I mean, a perfect example, similar layout from an in and out of one area would be like Clover Ridge. That's in the city of Chaska. There's a 4-way stop sign there off of Hunter Mark Road. That is right there. I mean, that's the same design that is at Ironwood Drive and Hartwell Drive as well. So I know that the city has their codes and ordinances too, but what would fall into place with Minnesota statutes and everything else from a school zone, school area, and everything else.
I'm speaking a little bit out of school because I'm obviously not a traffic engineer, but I think I think we're just off on terminology. There's not a school zone requirement for stop signs. I know you can implement a school zone for speeds at certain times of the day. And frankly, it hasn't been an issue because there's, if anything, there hasn't been traditionally a speed issue because Ironwood Drive is a dead end. There has never been traffic coming from the west. So that's certainly something that we can look into. I would also say, though, that the sign is just the sign, and it would, again, get back to enforcement. Just because we'd have a school zone sign there doesn't mean people would necessarily slow down. We'd have to get enforcement out there. I would also say, like, my son went to Clover Ridge. I mean, there's a different set of road factors there. There's not a county road, 4-lane county road right next to Clover Ridge. But I wouldn't say the city's against 4-way stop there. We just have to rely on our experts in that area. And if we have intersection failure for a 4-way stop, we don't want to solve one problem and create another one. I would say, though, that, in general, comment received. I know you've mentioned this in other forums. The city engineer is going to be reviewing it. They're going to be doing traffic counts. They're going to be coordinating with Ryan Finke, the principal. So as far as
Also
feedback.
maybe a little publicity about the issue, especially at school when it's getting a little closer to school starting again. Just a little publicity about the issue of speed and that intersection, and hey, let's watch out.
Yep. Well, and there's.
I mean, that could be in our newsletter.
Yes. Yep. We've done stuff. We can do more. I mean, I think just kind of.
And definitely some monitoring of speed up there
Yeah,
with the sheriff's
and
office.
unfortunately things have gotten a little bit nasty up there, and so we've actually, had deputies up there, not just for speed, but basically provide some buffer between some impatient parents and school faculty. So part of it is I would say, like, this is a little bit of rah-rah, but like kind of like we're all a community here and everyone's got a place to go, and let's all chip in.
I had to pick up my niece from Minnetonka Junior High. They actually had a police officer on duty for like 15 minutes in the morning, and when school got out, just to exactly direct traffic for that 10 or 15 minutes, just to make sure that it didn't get backed up. So I don't know if that's a option. They can work with the school district or the city for.
Yeah, I mean,
if, like I said, if it's a half hour in the morning.
Deputy Sandberg is up there as much as she can be.
Yeah, it's true.
I would, we have, it's no secret, we have one deputy on at a time, and so if there's something else going on, she can't be there. But, that's the city has a work plan related to law enforcement and providing and visibility and enforcement during those times of day around the elementary is a priority for the city and the community, so, yep, good point.
Thanks for bringing it up.
And actually, so I had another kind
Mhm.
of follow-up. So I can't remember if it was the last council, but they approved the park expansion as well, right? Or that got finalized? And that'll
Yep,
be
so
starting with-
starting within the
Ironwood.
next like week or so, yep.
That'd be nice.
Hmm?
Nice new. When it's done.
Anybody else? Any other communications?
Just want to mention, next weekend, there will be a book sale at the Chaska Library.
Okay,
So
thanks, Jim.
help support the Chaska Library and get a good book.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. If there is nothing else, could I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Is a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Yep, thank you.